Okay, so have a great day, everyone. This day we are going to talk about the different principles of education, or we are going to talk about the basic philosophies of teaching, or the basic principles and basic philosophies of education and some teaching learning process. So, this topic, this discussion will focus on the content of the philosophies of education, and this will really help us, to guide us in our endeavor to continue to impart the knowledge to our learners. When we are going to teach, especially to the would-be teachers, future licensed professional teachers, this will be our guide, our basic principles in delivering the instruction or delivering the content to our uh, prospective learners in the future. So I hope that in this presentation, in this discussion, talk about the foundation of education, philosophical foundation of education will really help you when you will be preparing for the board exam or uh, when you are already in the field of teaching, because this will serve as your foundation on the teaching profession. So to start, let us begin with the basic definition of education, the foundation, the definition of the word education. The term education has its origin in the Latin words educo, educare, or educatum, meaning these are what we call the etymology of the word education. Because when we go beyond on the discussion of the philosophies of education, we will be having this good background idea of what is all about the definition of education. So the etymology, it's a Latin term, educo, educare, educatum. The word education is derived from the Latin word educo, where e means out of, duco means lead. So to lead something, no, our learners, to lead them into a proper path in order for them to achieve their set goals. No? So we as professional teachers, as future teachers, that is our mandate to lead our learners into a proper path of learning process. According to this view, education means I lead out darkness into brightness. So if you would like to become a teacher, no, you are the bringer of light, no? Ikaw yung nagbibigay ng liwanag sa kadiliman, no? Mula sa kamuwangan, no, ng isang mag-aaral. So meaning to say, we as teachers, professional teachers, would-be teachers, aspiring teachers, and those who would like to become a teacher in the future, no, although they are not in the teaching profession, they could be a teacher someday in whatever form. We are the bringer of light, no, in order to shed light in the darkness. So that is our mission as a teacher. So there are various philosophies, there are various guiding principles that will lead us into achieving this aim of education, no, which is to shed light in the darkness to our learners. There are various definitions of education with different experts when it comes to the teaching profession or the education in the world of education, like the following that being mentioned here in the slides. Education means the training for the country and love for the nation. So that's one of the definition. So in our country, Philippines, the biggest budget, the appropriation, General Appropriation Act, no, the huge budget goes to education because according to them, that is the greatest weapon, that we could use to uplift our economy, our quality of living, the education. Okay. Another definition, education is the realization of self. So that is a very broad definition of education. So some of these definitions are not being technically being defined from the word itself, education, but it is idiomatically being expressed, onto the context of education. So if you try to understand a simple sentence could really give us different meaning and definition of the word education. Another definition from, of course, one of the most famous, no, individual, we have Mahatma Gandhi. Education is an all-around drawing out of the best in a child, a man, body, mind, and spirit. So that's the totality of the humanity, you know? Developing or unleashing, polishing the human body, mind, and spirit. So that is how he defined education. In another definition in this slide, education is the natural, harmonious, and progressive development of man's innate power. So, meaning to say, the word that I am going to emphasize on this definition is the progressive development. So, learning is a continuous process. When you earn something, it doesn't mean that you must be contented of that because it is a progressive development. Although you are done already with your degree, with your profession, education is always part of the process of ourselves to develop something, to grow from what we have. So if you try to look at the different definition, it has a very broad definition, and it may have different views of the different individuals, but this definition would really help us understand what is all about education. And while we are going to discuss the different philosophies of education, this will be our basis, our foundation on understanding on how to deliver this to our learners. How can we develop? How can we change a certain individual? How can we impart all of those, the knowledge, the skills, the virtues that we would like them to develop? This is all about the totality of the definition of education. Of course, there are aims of education. If you try to look at the slides, there are different aims of education. So later we will be discussing that individually, the 2468 aims of education. So to go forward, no, so these are the aims of education, individual aim. So as an individual, this would be the aim of education to an individual human being in this community, in this society, in the country. Number one, development as individual of a human being. So we are being sent to school. We are being trained to become a developed human being, individually. Of course, when we were sent to school, our parents are expecting and aiming us to become morally upright, spiritually upright, develop our morality and the spirituality of a certain human being. So if you try to look at, there are various aims of the education to ourselves as individual in this society. Of course, cultural development. So if you try to understand and recall when you were still studying in elementary, in high school, and even college, there are culture, Philippine pop culture, culture development, and understanding of the different cultures. So that's part of the aim of education if you try to look at the curriculum that being offered. So if you run through to these aims of education, you can see that these are all being offered in the curriculum. Harmonious development, okay? Promote positive and physical development. So these are being part of the curriculum of not only in the physical education, but it is always integrated into whatever skills and whatever competencies in the learning areas. Of course, we could have the development of right personality. Now, if you still remember the old curriculum when we were in elementary, is the good moral and right conduct, which were being planned to be implemented again because of some deterioration. No, according to some observation of some expert, that the personality, the behavior, the attitude, the values of a certain Filipino individual, especially the young ones right now, are deteriorating now. So it's a plan of the right agencies, especially the regulatory bodies, the educational agencies of our country, especially in the basic education. No, they are planning to um, back again in the curriculum the good moral and right conduct. No, Then the development of good citizenship, good leadership. These are being intensified in the subject in the learning area like social studies, social sciences, and integration not only on that subject, but it must be integrated because in the curriculum, integration is very integral and important. And we have emotional and mental development. Some says that the educational system of the Philippines is the problem, and not the teachers, not the facilities of the school, not the school itself, but it's on the system now on how to develop a certain human being. No? That's a controversy. That is another issue that we need to talk on the other time. But for now, we are just discussing on the foundation of education. And of course, there are a lot more pa nga we want to develop to a certain individual when we want them to talk about the aims of education. On the last, I think it's not the last, we have the character building. No? We need to build the character of the human being. So if you are, others are saying, there are some controversy when it comes to education. There are a lot of educated individuals, but they are not acting like an educated one. So that is a great challenge for us, future teachers or already professional teachers, to to take to look into it on that statement on the issue of there are a lot of individuals who are already educated but they are acting like an uneducated individuals because they can observe also those who are uneducated, they are more likely to act to become an educated individual. So those are issues and concerns when it comes to the educational system of the Philippines, the entire. So we as teachers, future teachers, that is part of our responsibility and mandate, no, to look into this, the different aims of education. So it is divided, no? If you try to look at on this presentation, it was categorized. The aims of education are being categorically divided into three aims: the spiritual development, the moral aims, and cultural aim. So if you go to run through to the specific details on this presentation, no, on this slide, we start with the cultural aim. No, undergoing education, child becomes cultured and civilized. No, when we hear a statement that example of this statement, that lady is highly cultured, meaning to say he was being educated, properly grown up, no, because he was being educated and properly given such education. No? That is what we aim to a certain individual that who aims to become an educated person. No? We want them to be highly culturalized person and civilized individual. No? They know how to act properly into different set of variation or set of situations, no? As the situation demanded. Cultural development is through development of aesthetic sense and respect for others' culture. So if you try to recall when we were in elementary, there is a subject civica cultura. In high school, it was always been emphasized in the subject social studies, and in college, we have different subjects like sociology, anthropology. No, respecting other culture by not discriminating other culture and not become a racist and understanding the multiculturalism, no, or especially in our country, no, we are composed of the different. We are identified as a Filipino. We have our own identity, Filipino culture, but we have different subcultures that we need to understand and to study their culture so that we could avoid judging other culture. So these aims are very challenging. No? When it comes to moral aim, moral values like honesty, loyalty, tolerance, justice, self-control, and sincerity. These are just a word. These are words that being stated here, but it is very challenging on how to impart and to practice these moral values that we wanted our learners, but it is a great challenge for us on how to transform all of those learners that we will have in our classroom or in our class so that we can promote social efficiency of each individual. So, moral aims. Then we have the spiritual development. Education, as this child to develop certain human values, attitudes, habits, which are essential for building a desirable character. So we want our learners, no, when they are fully educated individuals, they become they portray desirable behavior, no, desirable morality, desirable character. So that's the totality of the development of the character building of a certain individual. So if you want to become a teacher, so you must have the utmost example of those aims, no? Because it is very impossible to teach to our students when we don't possess all the things that we want them to possess. So we became a model and a molder. No? We want them to mold to become what we want them to become. And at the same time, we need also to portray, we need also to model those aims that they want, that we wanted them to portray. So it's like leading by example. Okay, so that is why being a teacher, being a professional teacher, that is a very challenging profession. That is why it is being called one of the most noblest profession of all. No? Because we need to act like this and we need to perform like this. We need to portray like this, not only in the classroom, but in the entire society that we are living. Because every single mistake that we could commit in the society, we are always being tagged that, "Uy, we are a teacher. That person is a teacher. Supposedly, he or she should portray the best and the utmost consideration of this, following morality, spirituality, and the rest of those demanded virtues on us being a teacher." So that is why it is a great challenge. So if you want to become a teacher, we need to talk about this. We need to think of these following materials, following aims that we want to develop to our learners. So in this point, aims of education is stated by Secondary Education Commission. In our constitution, in the different regulatory bodies, we are being required and mandated to take all those subjects and all of those competencies and skills. In the Constitution, we are being, in the Philippine Constitution, all the quality of education is discussed on that, like the development of democratic citizenship, the vocational efficiency, the personality development, and qualities of leadership. So meaning we are preparing, because we are telling that the youth are the future of this country, of this society. So it is a great challenge for us teachers, to mold the youth that we have, because they are the future of this country. So the duties and responsibilities is given to us professional teachers to mold, to expect a kind of citizens that we have in our country. So what are the functions of education? Ano ang mga functions ng edukasyon? Number one, individual functions, national function, and social function. So it is a tripartite functions. Now, in individually, we have different we need to function, and we have our functions in our country and to our society. So let's start with the national function. So what is the function? Why there is a need to educate the citizen of the country? That's the number one, the national function, ensuring national development. If all of our citizens are literate and educated, of course, economic activity, the quality of life, the quality of life again, and the progress, the development of the entire citizenship and the entire country. Ensuring national development, promoting national integrity, continuous supply of skilled workforce. Of course, we need a skilled workers, professionals who will work in a nation building. When we aim to have the nation building, the sustainability of our country, of course, we need to train our citizen to become more skillful, and we will have a good quality of workforce or human resources. And education, one of the function in the national function level, is to develop future leaders in our nation. So when it comes to social function, it improves social efficiency, civilization of cultural security, preparing good citizen, reform and progress of society. Now, because we all know that our society needs to have a kind of citizenship who could preserve its culture, social efficiency. We become efficient in our society. And of course, we need to cultivate our learners to become a good and responsible citizen of our country. Become a competent, in their chosen field of endeavor, socially responsible, because when they become fully grown individual, we wanted them to become a responsible citizen of this country. And of course, give an ideas, planning, and contribute to reform and progress of our society. So those are the backgrounds of the functions and aims of education. So if you want to become a teacher, these are the different philosophies, no? Philosophies of your teaching profession, no? Teaching philosophies. This will serve as, again, I repeat, I have mentioned this in earlier, that when you want to teach, when you want to impart knowledge, skills, values, attitude to our learners, we need to think of a philosophy. No? I think I don't need to elaborate what is a philosophy. No? That's a wisdom, no? That we need to use in order to deliver the lessons, the content, the aims of education. If we want that aims to be achieved by our learners, we need to look into different philosophies that will be used in order for those aims and function to be achieved in our nation building. So the term is very challenging, no? Nation building. So we as teacher, we are being challenged. We are tasked and mandated by the government, by this country. Although you are working in a private school or in a public school, we are all mandated with our profession. No? We are being regulated by the Professional Regulating Commission or the PRC. No? We ought our profession. We ought our allegiance to our country, no? To love our country, to protect the country. By that, if you are being a teacher, you are being mandated to achieve the aims and function of education through the different philosophies that we are using when we are in the actual classroom. Because there are some questions, there are some controversies, no? On the idea of the educational system of the Philippines. I know we are all challenged on that, but this will really help us. Okay? So on the end of the discussion on the philosophy of education, I will let you choose, no, or your own philosophy that you're going to use in the near future. So that's our first exit card, no, that you're going to write in our comment section below to choose your own philosophy of education. So what is philosophy of education all about? So let's have a short backgrounder of the term philosophy of education that will really help us in our profession as a teacher, a professional teacher. Now, some of us, when we are already in the field, we are no longer thinking of our philosophy of teaching. But that is very important. Now, when we are in the field of teaching already, we need to think of these following philosophies because it's already in the mindset again of those teachers, professional teachers. Once they pass the board exam, there's no need for them to grow professionally, to think of those topics or competencies that was discussed in by their professors in their college, in their tertiary education when they took up Bachelor of Science education or whatever related to education. But for this time, I hope that it will help us to refresh for those who are already a professional teacher and for those who are aiming to become a teacher in whatever form, or for those who will become a professional teachers. This will be a great help for us when we talk about the basic. Now, we are going to discuss the basic pillars of education because there are traditional, we have modern, postmodern, but generally, basically and generally talking, this could really help us in understanding our learners because that is our first concern, our learners in the classroom. So to start, let's have the term philosophy has a Greek origin, philosophia, which is made up of two words, phileo and sophia. Phileo means the love, and sophia means the wisdom. Now, I know that you have your subject, logic, philosophy, metaphysics, or higher on that, talking about philosophy. So, philosophia. Phileo means the love of, and sophia meaning wisdom. So, literally, the meaning of philosophy is love of wisdom, or the passion of learning. So, I hope that we can, excuse me, distinguish what is knowledge and wisdom. No? Uh, this philosophy meaning the passion of learning. Now, I hope that it is in ourselves to consider that learning is a passion. Learning is a continuous process. It will not stop. It will not. It will not hinder us. Dapat when we already learn, we need to learn pa more. No, learning how to learn is one of the most important things that we need to consider to our learners. Okay, next, another, no? As we defined earlier, the education, when we understand the definition of education, this time we need to understand philosophy. Now, there are several experts, I think they are all philosophers, who give us the definition, the broad definition. I know that philosophy is difficult for us to define it, technically, but by this, it will really help you understand the definition of philosophy. This following individual gave us the easiest way to understand the word philosophy. Number one, philosophy is the science of knowledge. You know? How knowledge evolve, how knowledge occur. So that's the science of knowledge. And philosophy is the science of all sciences. Imagine, the philosophy is the mother of all sciences. Another definition, philosophy is a search for comprehensive view of nature and attempt at a universal explanation of nature of things. This would really help us. Universal meaning entire. So when this word is being defined in other country, in other place in this world, in this universe, we have the same explanation on that matter. So it is more likely to become called as a law, no? When we have our science subject, when we are being asked to compare what is law and what is theory, of course, law are universal knowledge, universal explanation being accepted by the entire place of this world. So the same with philosophy. When we talk about this type of philosophy, this philosophy is explained on this matter in this manner. It should be discussed in the same manner in other places in this world, in this universe. So that is why it's an attempt to universally explain a phenomena, a nature of things. No? So I hope that it will give us the clear idea. No? So when we combine already philosophy plus education, meaning it's a universal explanation on how education operates in this society, in this universe. Again, I repeat. So when we combine the word philosophy and education, this is how education operates in its society, community, in the world in general. Okay, so by this, we can understand more clearly and vividly on the knowledge, information about education. So let's categorize now. I hope that you're still with me and you're starting to understand and to process all the information that I am now giving to you. I hope that it will really help you uh, to understand the entire abstract of information because this have been all abstract information. I hope that you could really process. So to continue, there are based on the presentation. I am also basing this one to the presentation. No? We have two category and or classification of educational philosophies. The first on the left, we have the traditional philosophies. On the second, modern contemporary philosophies. So if you try to look at the similarities of those category, you can observe that there are ism, no? Ism, no? So we will start. I hope that you can grasp the knowledge and idea of these following philosophies, so that it will be so that you can apply this one into your own classroom. Okay. So if you are preparing to become a teacher, this is a great help for you on how you deliver the instruction, the lesson, the content, the skills, and everything that you wanted to deliver to your students or your learners. So let's start. The first philosophy, the traditional philosophy, naturalism. The word is natural. No? There are chief proponents, meaning to say these are different individuals who have proposed and studied about the naturalism. We have Rabindranath Tagore. I think he is an Indian. John Jacques Rousseau, a Russian. Jonan Henrich. Of course, they are all European. Two individuals are European. So I am trying to explain it in a very simple way so that everyone who's watching this video will be able to grasp the simplest way. I hope that I could explain it in the simplest way, because it is a very complex field when we talk about philosophy. And let us try to integrate and apply this one into a real classroom setting. Okay, and of course here, how aims of education to be achieved by using this type of kind of philosophy. So let's start with the concept. No, educating human gener concept, educating the human generation about and in the nature rather than artificial environment by keeping in the mind of individual of each child. So the artificial environment, no? So rather than thinking of the artificial environment, when we talk about artificial, these are synthetic, not real. So in natural, for example, it's in the natural of the mind of a child that he is an inquisitive. No? If you try to observe a certain individual, a certain child, no? Your niece, your nephews are always portraying a natural behavior. They are very inquisitive. They keep on asking questions. If you try to observe on that. So educating the human generation about in the natural environment. So when we talk about this into aims of education, nature is considered the classroom. So the classroom let's integrate this one in the field of teaching. In the classroom, which is the nature, which is considered as the nature. Emphasis on open air schools to teach through direct experience with nature. So if you try to recall your science teacher, your Araling Panlipunan social studies teacher, those teachers are exposing you. I hope that they are doing that. No, we have exposing them onto the topic on the example of nature. So emphasis on open air. So if you are Araling Panlipunan social studies teacher, of course, you expose them into a field trip, an everyday actual process of learning. If you are a science teacher, no, let them go on the surroundings and observe the nature, because that's the how our learners learn if we are using the naturalism approach of philosophy of teaching. So when we talk about curriculum, the basis of curriculum development was child's nature, interest, and needs. So we need to consider on the interest of our learners. So if you are a teacher, consider first the needs of our learners. Their interest, you ask them what makes them interested. You get their interest, because most of our children right now, they have a short span of attention. So stressed on the subject dealing with nature, such as in sciences, language, mathematics. According to Rabindranath Tagore, also stress on teaching spiritual values of nature. Okay, so methods of education, when you are teaching already in the field using the naturalist approach or the naturalism, as natural as possible considering individual differences, noble efforts for planned living with nature, direct experience. So, um, like if you recall the Dale Cone experience, no? The more the experience are high, the more the learners are learning. Now, when they are directly involved in the learning procedure or process through nature, through observation, excursion, experimentation, and play way, so that is why the nature of a child, they are very playful. So you need to expose them on these different activities or methods in the teaching and learning process. No, direct experience. So if you want to show them this is an apple, so let them touch the apple, let them taste the taste of the apple. No? So let us give them the direct experience. Let them experience, let them experiment and expose to the different learning experiences. So as a teacher, what is your rule in naturalism? Teacher is an observer and facilitator. So you are just a facilitator. You are not the one who feed the information. You are not the one who feed the knowledge. You are there to facilitate by exposing your learners, by letting them experiment, by experimentation, by observation, and playing in with the natural surroundings. So you are a facilitator of the child to develop in nature. You facilitate best possible natural environment for prompt learning. So if you try to look at our setting, our classroom setting, of course, it's already a synthetic one. No? The classroom are being arranged. No, it is already an artificial way of how to learn because that's a classroom. That's not the natural surrounding that we have. So although the risk is very high because you are going to expose that into surroundings which are risks are there. So that is why you need to plan ahead of time and facilitate it well so that the aims of your lesson and the objectives of your lesson will be attained. Okay, next is discipline. No emphasis on external rigid discipline on this. Recommend free discipline to child in nature for optimum desired learning. So that was so challenging because there's no rigid and vigorous way of disciplining the students. So let them enjoy the surroundings, let them enjoy the environment, let them enjoy the learning process. Because that is what we want. That is the optimum desire of the learning process in a naturalism approach or naturalism philosophy of education. So those are the things that we need to consider in the naturalism. The second one is idealism. So the root word is idea. These are the following proponents. Of course, we have Socrates, Plato, and the rest of those in the slide. The concept believes that the act of knowing takes place within the mind. No? So we need to say everything that we learn is always in our mind. So if you try to observe and differentiate naturalism, it is far different from it because we can learn through, if we're talking about naturalism, it's all about the environment. But here, it's all about in the mind. No? For three values like intellectual, aesthetic, and moral values. The purpose of education is the development of the student mind and self. So it's all about the intellect of the human being. So when it comes to aims of education, well-planned formal classroom. So if we go back to naturalism, there is no rigid design of the classroom, you know. But when it comes to idealism, the classroom should be a well-planned formal classroom or formal place of teaching and learning activity is recommended. So it is more like a classroom which is being planned by the teacher and rigidly follow all the protocols and procedures of learning. So in the curriculum, it's inculcating intellectual, aesthetic, and moral values or discipline. Now, earlier in naturalism, the discipline is not that of rigid, but in this idealism, in the curriculum, the discipline is being emphasized. Now, intellectual value is represented by subjects such as language, literature, science, mathematics, and the rest of the learning areas that we need to emphasize to the mind of our learners. Next, on the methods of education. Idealism recommended formal classroom. Imagine it's a formal classroom, teaching methods such as lecture, direct instruction, discussion, presentation, group interaction. I think most of us are doing this in college. If you try to look at in the tertiary education, they are look more on the idealism approach. Knowledge is transferred from the more mature person, the teacher. Here, I think it's all information, the feeder of knowledge is the teacher, the instructor, the professor. So idealism is more like being applied in the tertiary education. Less mature people, a person, pupil through formal and well-planned teaching learning methods. Okay? We are doing that. No, we are doing this no, in the classroom. Like the teacher are talking, the source of information is only the teacher. So let somebody discuss things. No? So what is the role of a teacher in an idealism? Which is considered as the center of education, meaning he or she is the sage of the stage, the main source of information, where students or learner catches fire from teacher who is himself a flame teacher from must be ideal and a role model for the child both intellectually and morally. Meaning the teacher should be knowledgeable enough so that he can impart everything to his learner. The teacher should exercise great creative skills in providing opportunity for the pupil's mind to discover, analyze, synthesize creative application of knowledge to life. When it comes to discipline, idealism believes in the interconnection of discipline and interest. It advocates discipline for self-realization of individual. It does not favor rigid discipline but advocates spontaneous, no? Meaning your discipline, the classroom discipline, individual discipline is just an spontaneous and be yourself and not being planned. So this is idealism. So now let's proceed to the third one, pragmatism. So what is all about pragmatism? So we can observe we have John Dewey, one of the most famous educator, and the rest of being mentioned. So pragmatic. So the word pragmatism means practicality. If you are being practical, the practicality of education. So what is most practical must be applied. It considered self-activity as the basis of teaching and learning process in the context of cooperative activity to create optimistic men who are the architects of their own fate by the process of their efforts. So the reason why you are being educated, if you believe on the pragmatic approach or pragmatic philosophy, that we need to become an architect to ourselves, create optimistic men, positive men. Education should be according to child's aptitudes and abilities. Where he or she is respected, then education is planned to cater his inclination and capacities. So if I'm interested in these skills, I should have that kind of skills to be taught by my teacher. So that's pragmatic approach or practicality. So the aims of education on this is to teach on how to think. So if you are pragmatic, you need to to develop also your mind and how to develop on how to think, so that one can adjust to an ever-changing society. In order to produce creative and resourceful and adaptable children, we should have conditions in the school which are conducive to creation of these qualities of mind. So, meaning, the mind of a human being is important. No, develop of how to become creative thinker. Recommends formal schools to have activity-oriented learning based on the needs, interests, capabilities, aptitude of the individual student. So when we talk about the curriculum, the pragmatists believe on the broad and diverse curriculum, which is composed of both content, process, subject, ranging from humanities, geography, and science. So these are most skills and most learning areas that being developed in by the pragmatist. On the methods of education, The teaching and learning process is a social process where sharing of experience. So in a pragmatic approach of teaching, sharing of learning experience are very important, between the teacher and the student. So it prefer the method that are project method, activity-oriented. So pabalik-balik dito yung oriented, activity-oriented learners. You as a teacher, if you are pragmatist, what is your rule? Rule of the teacher is not that of a dictator. So in a pragmatist, you are not like an idealist. No? You are free. No, you are a taskmaster, but as a leader of the group activities. Teacher acts as the catalyst where he suggests a problem to students so that he could stimulate, develop the creative thinking of his or her students in order for them to become a problem solver. So that is what we want to our learners right now, to apply that one into a real life situation. Okay? Teacher is a mentor with resources to guide the students. So when it comes to the discipline, we have pragmatism does not believe in the traditional and firm discipline. So it's a free-flowing form of discipline. No? It is not being planned. It is not being artificially being constructed. No? It advocates for freedom, no? Self-discipline, a free and conducive teaching learning environment. So if you want to become a pragmatist, these are your guide. These are the principles that you need to follow. The number 4, realism. So, of course, we have Herbert Spencer, Aristotle, the proponent of this realism. So, what is all about realism? The concept. Human being understand and enjoy society in true sense by getting the multi-dimensional real joy of life in reality. It also aims for education to make life a man of useful, the usefulness of our existence in this world. So realism, no? Where a man can enjoy his activities and comfort in reality. Education should equip individuals to be a best possible meaningful life for vocational skills. So realism give us the idea that we need to become a meaningful life, vocational training, because that what is being demanded in our society. If you have those skills, your life become more possible na meaningful siya. Diba? So, the aims of education, it emphasizes on scientific attitude based on the realistic principles, where the child can extend his knowledge. He learns through books. So, realism, more like on the basic learning, like having the books as the basis of his learning. It has given due emphasis on formal schools, which provides adequate opportunity for learners to learn the skills, the vocational, through observation. So when we talk about the curriculum of a realist approach of teaching, students must base on their abilities, interests, and capabilities so that education helps the student to adjust to the changing circumstances of the society. It also emphasizes on the subject matter of real life. So it's an integration on all subject learning areas to become a real life situation. Like science, mathematics, vocational skills, vocational subjects should be applied into a real life context. That's the aim and the curriculum of a realist approach of teaching education or of the education. So how to teach, or the strategy or the methods? Believe in objectivity, knowledge or scientific evidences, and reality. Methods of teaching should be according to the needs, interests, capabilities of students. Vocational education should equip the individuals with the capacities to earn livelihood, such as experimentation, observation. So train our learners to be equipped of the different vocational skills. As of now, in the reality, if you have this skill, vocational skills, no life skills, you are being on the top of the list of being hired to be hired by your employer, because as of today, skills are very important. So what is the role of the teacher if we want to develop a learner to become using the realist approach? So a teacher must focus on the development of the vocational skills. like equip our learners with the quality of the preservation of our race, our life, the vocational behavior activities. So the teacher is a mentor and a role model and skilled to demonstrate vocational skills to the learner. So if you are teaching in a vocational institution, no, like TESDA, technical vocational schools, they are using the realism of kanang realism na approach or philosophy of education. When it comes to discipline, the optimum level of discipline without imposing undue stress on the learner. So I think it's not more of rigid when it comes to the discipline. So to recap before we continue, we are done already with the three, four na eh. So we are done with realism, idealism, and pragmatism. So we are done already with the traditional, no, from naturalism, idealism, pragmatism, and realism. So to continue, we are now already in the modern contemporary educational philosophies. The word perennialism comes from the word perennial. When you say perennial, pabalik-balik. No? When you say perennial problem, so it's common, no? So the main chief proponent is Thomas Aquinas, no? And the rest of those being mentioned in the slide. So what is perennialism? The concept of it, philosophy of perennialism. It ensures that students acquire understanding about the great ideas of civilization, the potential for solving problems in any generation, the focus to teach ideas that everlasting. When we say perennialism, it is more likely to be associated with forever, everlasting, no? Pabalik-balik, no? Like the skills of mathematics, the mathematical skills are all of those are everlasting. That is why we need to seek those skills, no? Seeking ensuring truths which are constant. No? When we teach facts, those we are using the perennialism, no? Because truth are being constant, no? As the natural human worlds in the most essential level. The aims of education in the perennialism. Educations develop rational person. When I say rational, the ability to reason out, the ability to think of, who is intellectual abilities to uncover universal truth. Oh, we are talking about truth here when we talk about perennialism. No? It's an ever-changing reality, an ever-changing truth. So character training is also important for moral spiritual development of an individual. So what is the focus of the curriculum? It emphasizes on language, literature, mathematics, arts, and sciences. No? Teaching learning process must create liberalism, tolerance, discussion among the learners, so they are free. You know? If you are a perennialist, if you choose to become a perennialist, these are the methods that you are going to emphasize. You need to promote constant teacher-taught interactions such as oral exposition, lecture explication, place on teacher-guided seminars, no, direct instruction, where students and teachers engage in mutual inquiry session. The Socratic method may be applied on this, no, the question and answer. If you are a perennialist teacher, you must be competent and master of all of your own subject matter so that you can help your learners to develop the power how to think deeply, analytically, flexibly, and imaginatively. So it's all about how to develop the rationality of being of a certain individual. So teacher is also authoritative on this in this rule of the teacher. You are being authoritative. So if you are an authoritative teacher, you are using the perennialist approach. So the discipline is very rigid, no? Should be organized and conducted in a manner that problem of this indiscipline does not arise at all. So grabe kay strict. When you are a perennialist, discipline is very important. It should be followed and rigidly followed. Another modern contemporary educational philosophy is essentialism. So we have William Bagley and the rest as the proponents. The concept of essentialism believes that there is common core of knowledge that it needs to be transmitted to the students in a systematic, disciplined way. The emphasis placed on intellectual and moral standard that schools should teach and preparing students to become valuable members of society. So it's a preparation of the human being, of a learner to become more productive and valuable individual in our society. Next, the aims of education. Essentialists recommend that formal schools or teaching and learning places. The aims of education is to promote intellectual growth, academic competitiveness. Or we need our learners to become more competitive and competent individual to become a model of this cities of this nation. The curriculum recommends intellectual content like capacity of the learners to become good in English, mathematics, natural sciences, history, foreign languages. So if you are an essentialist, these are the methods and your rule. And when it comes to discipline, these are also the things that we need to consider. So in the method, well-planned and recommended formal classroom teaching methods such as lecture, direct instruction, presentation, group interaction. Next, as a teacher, you are a role model and you must be a master of your subject matter. And of course, with high level of authority in order to impose those methods and your rule as a teacher. Because of that, the discipline of essentialism believes in a rigid way, vigorous way, devoted hard work of learners in his studies. So I think we have another one, existentialism. No? So we have Friedrich Nietzsche as one of the proponents. The concept of this philosophy is to believe that education must develop consciousness about the freedom of choices. So this is very different from essentialism. Existentialism are talking about your free choices among learners because a man becomes what he chooses for himself. So it's a freedom, not the choice. Education must equip the individual for better choices, giving us the options, the choices. Its ultimate aim is for education is to develop the knowledge of our children about human condition and the choices that person has to make for herself. So in the curriculum, it gives us the free opportunities for the children to select many available learning situations. So free process of teaching and learning. Like the humanities are commonly given tremendous emphasis on this, creativity and self-expression. So the method being used on this promotes the methods of education which emphasize on self-activity, illustrate emotions, feelings, and insight. So if you want to become an existentialist, so you are promoting freedom in the teaching and learning process. So if you are a teacher on this, you promote freedom for the learner to make personal choices and you should consider and provide multiple choices or availability of the different learning activities, no, of our learners. In the discipline, self-discipline but not strict discipline. Teacher creates an environment which students may freely choose their own preferred way on how to learn. So if you are an existentialist, so you are giving the chance to the students to offer different options and freely choose their own preferred way on how to learn. So we have another one, Reconstructionism, from the word reconstruct. No? We have George Counts and Paulo Freire and others. The concept believe on education and reorganizing and reconstructing the process of education. So about social and cultural contrastive changes in the community because they believe that change is constantly happening in the society. No? Where emphasis is placed on cultural pluralism. No? There are different cultures that exist in a certain environment. Equality, futurism, and natural interest is oriented in this education. So the aim of education in this philosophy is to recommend for formal as well as informal ways of organizing education. When it comes to curriculum, should be conceived with a new socio-economic political interest. Subject content must be oriented towards aspects of new changes, like social reforms, economic, political discipline. So most likely the subjects are social sciences when you talk about Reconstructionism. If you are an advocate of this philosophy, the method that you're going to use is we organize in a manner that student becomes self-reliant. Education must be activity-oriented to develop necessary activities and abilities of our learners. So your role as a teacher, you take the social responsibilities. Along with your students, you must become the agent of change, the agent to improve the society. So more likely, mga social sciences din eh. So the discipline is to propagate about optimum level of development, discipline, but not that of being rigid one. Another one is progressivism, from the word progress. We have Johann Dewey, one of those proponents. The progressivists believe that learning must be through problem solving. So when you are a progressivist, you are advocating a problem solving activity, scientific inquiry, project-based learning, problem-based learning. Those are the ways on how to advocate progressivist. Promote democratic living and transmits the culture of society while preparing students to adapt changing world. So what are the aims of education under the progressivist? It recommend democratic school procedures. So it's a free will of learning. Promote community of social reforms. When it comes to the curriculum, interdisciplinary in nature. So it could be integrated, one subject to another one. For the curriculum is based on child's interest and problem and life affairs. So the methods, child is considered as learner rather than the subject. So if you are a teacher of this, your rule must guide the learners for problem solving, leader for group activities, and partner in planning in the learning activities. When it comes to discipline, has not recommended any sort of specific formal discipline. So free, not that of rigid. So to recall, no, we will end up on this topic, the different philosophies of education, when comparing the traditional and the contemporary, modern contemporary. So the modern contemporary, we have progressivism, reconstructionism, essentialism, and we also have the perennialism. And for the traditional, we have four: realism, pragmatism, idealism, and naturalism. So, in the last part, no, you need to choose at least one from traditional and modern contemporary of what will be your choice of your philosophy of education. From one from traditional and other one for the modern. So I hope that I was able to impart in the simplest way on the discussion of this matter, which is the philosophies of education, the modern and modern, contemporary, and traditional one. So by this, no, we will have another set of discussion. For now, we will have to end on the philosophies of education. I hope that you have learned something from this discussion for this day. So thank you so much, everyone. Keep safe and God bless.